So welcome to the call. Thanks for joining me. This is the first call I've done probably in at least 3 or 4 months. The theme of the call, of course, is relationship breakthroughs. I had a lot of people reach out in early December asking for relationship advice, relationship help. So I thought, well, I can't answer everybody's questions all day, every day about relationships. So let's cram it all into one hour segment, a webinar, and try to help as many people out as we can all at once. So again, thanks for joining in. Now I'm going to start a screen share with the slide deck. Can everybody see that slide deck okay? So give me a thumbs up if you're in video, or just type a little "I got it" in the chat. Can you guys see that okay? Yes, perfect. Thanks, Kelsey. All right, so let's get started. So on tonight's agenda, we are going to start off with a quick intro. So who's this Nick guy and what does he know about relationships and breakthroughs? We are going to explore attraction. So where do love patterns and blocks come from and what to do about it? Then we're going to do what I think is going to be the absolute best part of this call, the uncovery process. Oh, I don't know how those lines, do you guys see those lines showing up? Okay, so please, I don't know how that happens. Let me see if there's an option, disable annotations. There we go. So we're gonna do the uncovery process, and that's a process that I'm gonna take you guys through, where we're gonna dig in and help you guys identify for each and every one of you what your blocks are. Then we're gonna go through the action steps. So we're gonna go through what you guys need to do based on what you uncover tonight to get to where you wanna go. And then we're gonna finish off with the dance party. And the dance party is something you're gonna do by yourself after the call, by the way. We're not doing that live on here. So how do I clear these lines? There we go. Okay, so a little bit about me before we dig in. My tagline is computer hacker turned people hacker. I spent 10 years in tech. I played a key role in a company that was acquired for 330 million US. That's when I left tech to focus on self-help. I spend my time studying now the subconscious mind, human behavior, what drives success, what keeps people stuck, the law of attraction. And I've been doing this breakthrough work now for about a little over 5 years. I work with clients in over 25 countries, published 2 best-selling books, including the relationship book, Single No More. And currently my partner and I, a little bit of background of Anik and I, we've been together for 6 years and we have some pretty cool synchronicities. So we met, I'm guessing 6 or 7 months after we both left our marriages. And my name is Nick, her name is Anik. So basically growing up, both of our parents called us Nick, and they still do. When we met, we were driving the same type of car. We now do the exact same type of work. And after we started dating, we even realized that we had both left our marriages on the exact same day before we had ever met. So some pretty cool synchronicities there. I talk about that in my book, Single No More. So today's goals. So the first goal, the first thing we're going to look at is higher level awareness. So I want to make you guys aware at a higher level that you attract the people you attract or struggles in relationships in one way or another. So this is kind of the foundational teachings that I want to teach you guys to really understand how attraction works. And then we're going to dig into deeper level of awareness. And we're going to show you guys through this exercise exactly what conscious, subconscious, mental, emotional blocks you guys are carrying for your relationship struggles. So let's dig into the higher level awareness. So a lot of people come to me and they'll say, oh, Nick, you went from hacking computers and tech to helping people experience breakthroughs. What you do now is so different than what you used to do. And do you know what my response to that is? False. What I do now is almost the exact same thing that I used to do in tech. The only difference is that computers, the behavior of a computer is driven by source code. Human behavior is driven by emotions and beliefs. And once you understand that, you understand that humans are programmable just like computers. So your entire physical reality experience, especially in relationships, is driven by how you think and how you feel. What you desire, what you attract, and how you experience all the facets of life are based on your programming, and that programming are the thoughts you think and the emotions that you carry, your emotional baggage, right? And once you understand that, and once you understand how to change that human programming, you can begin to start to change the aspects of your physical world, right? The way you experience relationships, the way you experience your careers, the way you experience money, right? It all comes down to the thoughts you think and the emotions you carry. So where does our human programming come from? Does anybody want to take a guess? Right? Where do you think that programming comes from? And you can type it in the chat window. Parents, yep. Family, yep. Childhood, absolutely. Parents, yep. School, generations, absolutely. Parents. Parents are a big one, absolutely. Friends, teachers, yeah. So they basically come from pretty much all over the place. Society, good one, life experiences. By the way, does anybody know what movie this picture is from? Matrix, cool. Any Matrix fans in the house? All right, let's keep going. So our programming mainly comes from two sources. One, life experiences, right? So traumas such as physical, emotional abuse, maybe being cheated on, breakups. So maybe a bad relationship breakup, the feelings of hurt and rejection, unwanted outcomes or circumstances, maybe being fired unfairly, maybe being bullied. And then the other big source is childhood programming, right? Parental behavior. So if you've seen unhealthy dynamics between mom and dad, emotionally manipulative or abusive parents, maybe highly judgmental or criticizing parents or siblings, these are the things that form our perspectives and shape our emotional baggage, which in turn shapes our experiences. So these experiences form our perspectives and our emotional baggage, but how? Right? How do these emotions that we carry and these beliefs impact how we experience our reality? Well, when it comes to emotional baggage, we chase after our desires to fill emotional voids. So let's say you grew up with a judgmental parent who always made you feel like you're not good enough. Then you chase after experiences to fill that void, to make you feel good enough, right? Then we also need to understand that our circumstances, especially relationships, mirror those emotional wounds back to us. Okay? And emotional baggage also pulls us out of our natural states of joy, ease, and satisfaction, right? So joy and happiness is our natural state. And the more emotional baggage that you pick up and you carry, the more it creates a fog around that state of joy, and the harder it is to maintain that happy place. So what do limiting beliefs and fears do? Well, they prevent us from moving forward. They create anxiety, money blocks, relationship blocks, sabotaging patterns. They can be responsible for health issues, right? These are all types of programming that people are carrying, impacting their physical reality experiences. Now, you guys are here for some relationship talk. So let's get into how these things impact relationships. Okay. So first of all, and the most important thing to understand is that the emotions we carry, whether we realize they are there or not, are reflected back to us through those emotional voids. So, for example, if you're carrying a lot of emotions of not good enough, you're likely going to attract partners who might cheat on you or who might be hard to please. If you carry strong emotions of abandonment, then you're going to attract most likely partners who are emotionally unavailable or people who are never there for you or who might abandon you. If you've got a lot of emotional baggage that contains powerlessness or stuckness, then you might attract people who are very controlling or manipulative, right? These are patterns that I've seen over the last 5 years. I call these the archetypes of attraction. I talk about this in my book, Single No More. And we're going to go through those archetypes a little bit later after we do the digging exercise. After we help you guys find out exactly what emotions you guys have going on, because most people don't even realize most of the baggage that's there. Now, the other thing you need to look at in the context of relationships is limiting beliefs and fears. And these create what's called split energy. So split energy is when part of you wants something, but part of you doesn't. So let's say you're in a relationship for 3 or 4 years and your partner was extremely controlling and you were never able to do what you wanted. After that relationship ends, after you guys break up, part of you wants a new relationship because you want to get married and have babies, but a subconscious part of you is afraid of being in a relationship because you now believe that when you're in a relationship, you're not able to do what you want. So part of you wants it, part of you doesn't. That creates the split energy. And when you have split energy, it either makes it very difficult to attract a partner because you're sending out these vibes of relationships aren't safe, stay away from me, or you develop a self-sabotaging pattern where within a couple of months of being in the relationship, when things get too close, you start to feel unsafe and you do things that mess that relationship up. So again, the two key aspects to look at for relationships is the emotional baggage, defines what you attract, and fears, which is split energy, which are self-sabotaging patterns and those vibes that keep people away. So let's quickly recap this formula for a big relationship breakthrough. So emotions define who you attract, they're responsible for the patterns. Fears define how you experience relationships, the lack of attraction and self-sabotage. So here's what you need to do to create a relationship shift. You need to identify and you need to clear the programming, being the emotions and the beliefs and the fears that you're carrying that are responsible for those unwanted circumstances. That's the key, and this is paramount. You cannot escape your own inner programming. If you want those relationship patterns to change, if you want your relationship circumstances to change, you need to deal with this programming or else things won't change. All right, part 2, this is the good stuff. Now we're going to dive into the deeper level of awareness. This is where we're going to help you guys dig in and identify what the programming is that each one of you guys have going on, so you'll know what you need to shift in order to move forward. So most people aren't aware of the blocks that they're carrying, and there's a few different reasons. Here's 2. One is that they're stuck in the energy of the problem. When you're stuck in the energy of the problem, you're not energetically putting yourself in the place where the solution can show up, and it's because you're overly focused on the problem. The second is what I call background noise. Now, what happens in the context of emotions is, well, you guys all know what background noise is, right? When you walk into a room, you turn on the air conditioner and it's got a rattle, and you notice the rattle for the first couple of minutes, and then that rattle kind of falls out in the background. You stop noticing it, even though the noise is still there. Well, humans do the same thing with their emotions. So as a child, if you grew up maybe with a parent that was always judging you, always making you feel like you're not good enough, what happens over time is that you stop noticing that that emotion is there. You stop noticing that you've got that feeling of not good enough, right? And you're still compensating for it, it's still pulling you out of that happy place, right? You're still attracting partners that make you feel like you're not good enough, but you don't know why, right? And it's because that emotion is dormant inside of you. So first we're gonna uncover split energy, because split energy is actually pretty easy to uncover. So all you need to do, and I want you to ask yourself this question, and if you've got a pen or paper, you can write this down. Now I want you to ask yourself and see what the first thing that pops up in your head is. So if tomorrow I were to meet someone and we fell in love with each other over the course of a few weeks and things started to get serious, how does that feel unsafe? What's the worst thing that could happen? Right? And feel free to write the answer down in the chat window if you feel comfortable doing that, right? If you meet somebody tomorrow, if you guys fall in love, what's the worst thing that could happen? Right? How does that feel unsafe? So somebody mentioned, I might get my heart broken, I might get taken advantage of, I won't be able to do what I want. Linda says her ear starts ringing, that's interesting. I'm scared they'll leave me, they'll abandon me. What if I lose it? Right? I'll be separated, I'll lose them. And something you can ask yourself too is, how does that relate? How does that fear relate to past experiences? Right? Is that a fear that might relate to a past trauma, a past breakup, a past experience? Right? And take a second to notice how strong the emotional charge is behind that fear. Right? Tons of answers coming in. You guys are great. It won't last. They might be abusive. Right? Too good to be true. Right? These are all sources of split energy. Right? These are all things that you want to clear and deal with to make that path smoother to attracting that person, right? And to not having that sabotaging relationship, the self-sabotage. Thanks for sharing, guys. You guys are awesome. Next, uncovering emotional baggage. And this is the fun one. So everybody has emotional baggage, and most people have what I call 1 to 3 dominant negative emotions. Now, what we do is we look at a series of circumstances, past and present, and we identify what the negative emotion, typically 1 or 2 negative emotions, that go along with those circumstances. We'll look at career, relationship, finances, your biggest stress. We're going to go through a whole list of aspects and identify what negative emotion is attached to those aspects. And with about 85 to 90% of the people that I do this exercise with, it's the same emotions that keep coming up over and over and over again. When you have one of these repeating emotions, these are what I call a dominant negative emotion. These are the emotions that are strongest in your emotional baggage, the strongest emotions in your attraction point. They're what typically define your archetype, and these are the emotions that are getting in your way. These are the emotions you're going to want to clear in order to attract that perfect partner that you really want. So make sure you guys have a pen and a piece of paper, and I'm going to walk you guys through this exercise. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is write down what your biggest stress is. Your number one source of stress. The one thing that if you could snap your fingers and change it, what would it be? And then I want you to ask yourself, how does that circumstance make me feel? Is it angry? Is it stuck? Is it powerless? Is it hopeless? Is it frustrated? Is it unworthy? Okay. Next, let's do finances because that's a common one for a lot of people. Same question. How does your financial circumstances make you feel? And again, write down typically one or two. If you've got two that come up, write two down. If it's just one, just write one down. So do your finances make you feel stuck, powerless, angry, sad, disappointed? Make sure you guys are writing these down on your paper. And you guys don't need to share all these in the chat window yet. Do it on your paper first, and then we're going to see what kind of patterns you guys have. So we've done your biggest stress. We've done finances. Now, what about career? What about your job? And if you've got more than one job, you can do it for each one of your jobs. Ask yourself, what's the worst part about my job? Is it my boss that micromanages me? Is it that I don't have enough clients? Right? Is it that I have to work crazy hours? What's the worst or hardest part about your job? And how does that make you feel? So what's the one or two emotions that go along with that? And if you've got more than one job, you can do both. So we've got stress, we've got finances, we've got career. Now, the most telling is relationships. So what you're going to do is ask yourself how many significant relationships, romantic relationships you've been in. So if it's 3, you're going to do this for all 3 relationships. If it's 5, try doing it for all 5. 5 should be enough. If you're in a relationship now, you can ask that for your current relationship. And ask that same question. What's the worst or hardest part about that relationship? And how does that relationship make me feel? Right? What's the emotion that goes along with that? Do I feel like they control me? Do I feel like they make me I feel like I'm not good enough? So do it for each one of those relationships. I'll give you guys a few seconds to do that. Now, what about the dynamics between maybe you and your parents? So do you have one parent or 2 parents, or maybe somebody that maybe you and that person butt heads against each other a lot? Ask yourself the same question, right? If there's a specific or particular dynamic that creates negative emotion between you and certain family members, ask yourself the same thing, right? How does that circumstance make me feel? So last but not least, we're going to look at physical symptoms. Okay, oh, somebody's asking me to repeat the question. So ask the same question around your family dynamics. So if you've got a particularly challenging parent, maybe a challenging sibling, ask that same question. How does that circumstance make me feel? So next we're going to talk about physical symptoms, because physical symptomology also reflects those emotional states. So for example, people who have neck shoulder issues, right? It's typically emotions of not good enough, feelings of pressure, people who are typically feels like they sometimes need to be perfect, and may have had a judgmental or criticizing parent growing up. Lower back is typically feeling stuck, lack of control, powerless. IBS, so IBS is typically people who what I call have walking on eggshell syndrome, anticipation fear, right? I've got this book here, it's got 700 medical conditions and the mental emotional root causes. We're not gonna go through them, but if you've got a certain medical condition you wanna have looked up that you're curious about, You can send me an email sometime after the call and I'll try to get back to you. So now what I want you to do is look at the list and see if you noticed a pattern, right? Did the same 1, 2, maybe 3 emotions keep coming up over and over and over again, right? If so, feel free to share it in the chat window. So what was the pattern? What was the emotion that came up the most for you? Anybody willing to share? Fear, unwanted, not good enough, hopeless, worthless, sadness, not good enough, stuck, powerless, rejected, anger, stuck, unworthy. And if for some of you, there was no pattern, typically when I see people who don't have a pattern, it's often people who already do a lot of self-help and they're already doing some changes, some inner work. So remember, as you shift these emotions, as you clear this stuff, your circumstances change to reflect that. So people who have more of a mishmash of emotions, not always, but typically, it's people who are already doing a certain amount of self-work. Now, something else you could have added to that list as well is past traumatic circumstances. So maybe if you were ever in a car accident, maybe if you had a dog that passed away, those are things you can add to that list too and ask that same question, how did that circumstance make me feel? Okay. So now that you know what your dominant negative emotions are, we can tie those back to those 5 archetypes I mentioned earlier. Right? I think I mentioned 3 of them. And I've got an article that lists the full information about these archetypes on my website. I'm going to email this to you guys with the call recording tomorrow. So we're going to quickly go through these archetypes. So the first archetype of the 5 is what I call the victim. The victim typically attracts partners who are controlling, dominating, make you feel like you're not being heard. They can also be kind of highly reliant on you and create an unhealthy dependency. Often there's a lot of codependency going on with the victim archetype. The typical root emotional causes of this victim archetype pattern are those emotions of powerlessness, stuckness, trapped, hopelessness, lack of control, fears of losing control. So those are all emotions that typically create that attraction to the victim archetype. And then other symptoms might be lower back issues, IBS, having controlling parents during childhood, feeling like it's not safe to speak up, money issues, poor boundaries. Does this resonate with anybody? Does anybody feel like they might match that archetype? I'm curious to see which one's going to be the most prominent. So there's one yes there. Cool. Okay, let's go over to the next one. Not as much as I used to. Good. Yes. Victim. Yes. Yes. So a few people. Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And by the way, you won't just match one archetype. So some people will have one strong archetype and they only match that one. Some people will have one strong one, but then 2 others that kind of semi-match. You know, it's not a black and white thing because everybody's got different backgrounds. Everybody's got different emotional baggage. Some people are spread out evenly between 3 or 4, right? The important thing is to recognize which ones fit you and which emotions fit you, so you can then deal with them and, you know, stop being that archetype. So the next one is the unworthy. And the unworthy typically attracts partners who are unforgiving, hard to please, people who cheat, people who make you feel like you're never good enough. And there's possibly infidelity issues there. And the typical root cause for that one is not good enough and unworthy. And other typical symptoms there include having a critical or judgmental parent, having been bullied in school, neck, shoulder issues or tightness, upper back issues, and people who might be perfectionists. So this one is probably one of, if not the most common. How many people here feel like they might match the unworthy? Yeah, lots of yeses on this one. Okay, let's go to the next one. The third archetype is the unlovable. And somebody who matches the unlovable archetype is typically going to attract partners who are mentally, emotionally, or sometimes physically unavailable, or who abandon you or ghost you. They also make you feel like you're kind of a low priority versus other things like friends or family or their jobs. They might be workaholics. And frequently in this unlovable archetype, there's also intimacy issues, right? Typical root emotional causes of the unlovable are abandonment, rejection, loneliness, feelings of lack of support, feeling unloved, feeling like you're not good enough. Other symptoms might be having been abandoned by a parent as a child. So almost everybody that I've talked to who matches this archetype had maybe a lack of a mother or lack of a father figure in childhood, either physically or emotionally, right? Emotionally disconnected, not very present emotionally. So emotionally unavailable parents, abandoned by a parent, not seen as a priority as a child, and needing to fend for yourself as a child, right? So do many people feel like they're a match to this one? I've seen a few yeses come in already. A little bit, yes, yes, yes. Oh yeah, yes, yes. Yep. All right, the fourth archetype is what I call the rescuer. And the rescuer typically attracts partners who are dependent on you and seem maybe like they're broken or they need saving. Often they're partners who have financial issues, addiction issues, maybe mental health issues, severe anxiety, maybe depression. And they kind of put you in a caretaker role where you feel like you're responsible for their well being. The typical root causes of this are having poor boundaries, feeling responsible for others, love, a belief that love is about what I do for others, feeling powerless, stuck, lack of control. And other symptoms include needing to be the child parent, right? So some people grow up in an environment where the child actually feels like they're taking care of the parent. Having an emotionally manipulative parent can create the rescuer, or sometimes having maybe a bipolar parent. So are there very many people who feel like they match the rescuer? And I'm seeing a few yeses. This one typically isn't as common. This is me to a T. Yes, yes, yes. I'm tearing up. Nope. Okay, and the last archetype that we're going to look at, it's a little bit different than all the other ones. And this is what I call the comfortably single. And this comfortably single person is the person who's dealing more with split energy than with those emotional issues. So this is the type of person who is either not attracting a partner at all, or who's finding themselves in self-sabotaging circumstances within a few weeks or maybe a few months into the relationship. Typical root cause here is always fear. Fear of rejection, maybe fear of being hurt, maybe fear of being cheated on, maybe fear of being abused, fear of being controlled, right? And other symptoms, obviously past relationship traumas or hurts, and unhealthy dynamics witnessed maybe in your parents' relationships. So for example, if you saw maybe your mom treating your dad in a certain way, or your dad treating your mom in a certain way, observing that behavior as a child will make you believe that you'll need to re-experience those same dynamics for yourself in relationships as an adult, right? So how many people here think they've got that split energy that might be the comfortably single? And do you experience it kind of as just staying single, or do you experience it maybe as self-sabotage, or both? Self-sabotage, both, definitely single, both, single, maybe. Self-sabotage, but I don't want to stay here, and I don't want you to stay there. Self-sabotage, not wanting to give my emotions away. Yep, both. So lots of self-sabotage. Lots of great answers. Self-sabotage. Lots of men, but I ruin it. Yep, that's self-sabotage. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So this is an extremely important key point. Okay. If there's something to take away tonight, take this away. Those archetypes, they define what you attract, not who you are. Just because you've been the rescuer your whole life and that's your archetype, it does not mean that is who you are. It just means that that's what you've been attracting because of the emotion you've been carrying. Nobody is locked in to an archetype, right? Archetypes are just ways to define your pattern of attraction based on the emotional baggage that you're carrying. Again, just because you've had an archetype your whole life does not mean it's who you are. Okay? Is that crystal clear for everybody? Okay? It's a pattern of behavior and you can shift it. I've helped so many clients shift this stuff. You can let all of this stuff go. Okay? When Anik and I met, neither one of us were looking for a relationship. We had both spent the last, I don't know how much amount of time, the last months, years, working on ourselves, doing our own self-work, clearing our shit. Anybody who comes to me looking for relationship help, it's about clearing out your stuff. The more you clear those emotions, the better your relationships and love life are going to get, whether you're in a relationship or not. Is that clear? Because if you clear out those emotions of not good enough, you can't match that archetype. You're not part of it anymore. You're not going to attract that anymore. Right? So the more you clear this stuff out, the better and better the things are going to get. So now what? Right? So whenever I give a webinar, whenever I do calls with people, whenever I do speaking engagements, I like to give homework, right? I like to give people next step, right? What do you do next, right? How do you stop being this guy, right? So before I get into the actual steps, I want to make a very important point. And if you want change, you have to take action, okay? If your circumstances in life aren't changing, it's always one of two things. It's either lack of awareness, because you can't change it if you don't know what's causing it, right? So the first step is clearly understanding what's creating the unwanted circumstance. So knowing the root cause is half the battle, right? And that's what we've covered today, right? We've all dug in, we've done the exercise. Everybody here now knows what the root causes are. It's those dominant negative emotions and the fears, okay? Now, the second thing you need to do to create a shift, right, is apply the awareness, is take action. So in my experience, less than 10 to 15% of people take action on the stuff that they learn, right? How many of you guys know people that have been studying spirituality or self-help for years, if not decades, and their life isn't changing a whole lot, right? Can you think of people like that? Right? It doesn't matter how big your bookshelf is. It doesn't matter how many videos you watch. It doesn't matter how many books you read. If it's all intellectual knowledge, right? And you're not practicing the work, if you're not applying what you're learning, then things aren't going to change, right? And for me, that was a lesson. It took me probably 5 to 8 years before it really kicked in, right? I'd been studying this stuff a long time before I finally said, you know what? Something's got to change. I gotta do this. I gotta really apply it. And when you dig in and when you start applying, things can change very, very fast. But you gotta do the work and you gotta stick with it. Does that make sense? Is that clear for everybody? Right? Crystal. Thanks, Caroline. All right, so here are your action steps. Here are your takeaways. So the first thing I tell relationship seeking folk is get clear on the relationship that you want, right? Create what I call a relationship avatar. Write down all of the aspects you want in your next relationship. And not just physical aspect like height and eye color and muscle size. Also talk about emotional aspects. I love how this person makes me feel safe. I love how this person's always there to support me. I love how I feel when I wake up next to this person every morning. The more specific you can get, the more emotions you can add to that avatar, the better. Before Nick and I met, she said that she made an avatar. I think she said she had 50 things in her list, and I matched 48 of those 50 things. Don't be afraid to get specific. Okay? Now, in terms of clearing the emotional baggage, clearing the fears, the split energy. So the do-it-yourself route, the two processes that I recommend the most for doing self-clearing work, one is called the focus wheel. The other is called positive aspect lists. These are processes that come from the Abraham Hicks world. Google it. There's lots of instructions online. YouTube has some really good examples of focus wheels. Focus wheels can be a little bit tricky. If you have a hard time with focus wheels, do the positive aspect lists. For emotional clearing, some people clear through yin yoga, some people clear through meditation, some people clear through journaling, right? Those are things that you could start off with for yourself. Now, the best way to clear things is obviously working with a well-trained practitioner. Find someone who's specialized in clearing emotions. Find somebody who you feel safe with, who you feel comfortable working with. If working with a well-trained practitioner is an option for you, it's always going to get you the results quicker. And those results, if it's a good practitioner, should be permanent. Okay. I see Linda saying that there's an app for focus wheel. So if you're looking to do focus wheels, you can find the app. I prefer on paper. I find paper creates a bit more of an emotional imprint. But if you like the app, go for it. So working with a practitioner who's a good practitioner should always get you those results way quicker than you can do for self-work. When it comes to self-work, the issue with working on yourself is that you put yourself in the energy of the problem because it's your own stuff. And it's hard to be in the energy of the problem and the solution at the same time. You can't be in both at the same time. So even for me, even though I do this work with people, I go get a Nick or I go get somebody else to run a session on me if I've got something to work on. Now, if you don't have somebody that you already work with, you can reach out to me via email. I have a team of practitioners, and I'm also going to run a relationship focused group program starting, I believe, the second week of January. I've got room for 6 to 8 people. I might run 2 groups if there's enough demand. So if you do want to get in on that, it's going to be probably 10 weeks of group coaching. And in that group coaching, 90% of the work is going to be clearing all this stuff out because that's what needs to be done. If you're curious about what that clearing work looks like, most of what I do is EFT tapping and reframing combined. I'm trained in over a dozen different tools, timeline therapy, NLP, hypnotherapy, whole bunch of stuff. Mostly what I use is tapping now. Yeah, that's all online, Kim. Most of what I do is tapping now just because it gets the results so much faster for me. If you want to see what that type of clearing work looks like, I've got a video recording of an interview I did where I tapped with the host. I can send that to you. Just send me an email asking for it. And results can happen fast, right? I've seen clients manifest their ideal partners in like months, right? But the key thing again is you gotta do the work, right? There's no way around it. If your programming's there, your programming's there. Does that make sense? Is it sinking in that you gotta do the work? Good. All right, so wrap things up. Questions? So I've got time maybe for 10 minutes of questions. It's a little bit hard to sort through the questions in the chat window, but if you got a couple of easy questions for me, ask them in the chat window. If you do have a private question, you can send me an email, nick.bro@gmail.com. If you're curious about the group program or you want some one-on-one clearing work, same email address. I'd love to connect with you guys. If you want to friend me on Facebook, my account is /mbro. Like my business page, /mkbro, Instagram. You can follow me, /mkbro. And if you're looking for copies of my book, if you want some more resources, you can go to my resources page. It's nickbro.com/resources. So just taking a look, seeing if you guys have any couple of questions. Can you share examples from your wife's relationship avatars? I'm not sure if she's open to sharing that, but I'll ask her. Mahalo to you, Joanna. Thank you. You're welcome. Welcome. Caroline's asking, what was my archetype? I came up with the archetype stuff years after I worked on all of this stuff. So it's hard to say. Probably they're not good enough. So Kim says, I'm scared. How do I know I'm ready for a relationship? I say things, I need to lose weight first. I need to start my business first. So those are all rooted emotions of not being good enough. I'm seeing some people asking me to send them an email. This chat window goes away after the call is done. So if you could please send me an email, that would be great. I'm seeing a few law of attraction questions. I'm not going to get into those. Anik says she's going to create a document to share some of this stuff from her avatar, so that's good. Is comfortably single described in your book? It is, Sarah. And I've got an article that describes it more fully on my website. So just ask me for that, or I'll share that in the webinar recording email tomorrow. Okay, so these chats are going by way too fast. The webinar was helpful. You're welcome. Good, awesome. So I think that's it for tonight. So again, I don't know how many emails are going to be coming through. So if you do have questions, I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing my content. Thanks for following me. And I hope you guys all have some amazing holidays. And if you've got some good relationship manifestations that show up in the next week after this webinar, feel free to let me know about it. So thanks again for tuning in, everybody, and bye for now.